Today I'm going to be talking about the 2020 film Host. I'll be discussing the plot, what I liked about it, what I didn't, and I'm doing this from a DV Gold, as for my skill section I'm going to be making a short film. So at the end I'll be talking about what I can take from this film and add to my own. To start with, this film was directed by Rob Savage, and it is about a group who decide to do a seance over Zoom, which ends up going wrong. First, I thought that the names weren't very imaginative, including names like Emma and Gemma. However, I was surprised to find out that they went even more unimaginative than that by just using the actors' names, which works, I guess. But this is much better when we get to the person who's conducting the seance for them, who's called Salem, which I assume was after the Salem witch trials. However, that's the actor's actual name, so I think that's pretty cool. A negative, though, is they managed to do the good old 80s horror movie technique of making the characters incredibly unlikable, so we don't really care if they die. If you can't tell by now, the film's about a Zoom call where they decide to do a seance, and one of the characters, Gemma, gets bored of the action that's going on, or lack thereof, and decides to create a scene where she's met by a supernatural being. However, this didn't actually happen, and she ends up opening a realm for evil spirits to enter. And with classic horror movie timing, the woman who's organising this, his internet goes out, so the group are left by themselves. This then begins going badly wrong, with the spirit haunting them individually and eventually killing them in gruesome manner. We see people go from crying to just running away. So it was interesting to see how these incredibly deep and detailed characters react in this situation. However, one complaint I have with this is, for the most part, it did a very good job at building suspense and keeping a lot of things unknown. For example, when one of the characters is being killed, they cover a lot of the violence with it just being flashes due to her background popping over. This saved them with the CGI. However, at the end, when Gemma and the main character who hosted the thing are in a room, the monster comes and we see this CGI ghost, which I ended up laughing at, which wasn't quite the desired effect. But up until then, it was doing very good. So for my closing points, it's overall a pretty good film. It does a good job of building suspense with a very low budget and using props and items that they have lying around the house. They also didn't waste too much money on set design with using the actors' rooms, and due to there only being a few scenes, this kept budget low. The CGI was not great and let the film down because of that, and I've always thought that it's better to leave the villain unseen. For example, in films like The Quiet Place, would have been a lot scarier, in my opinion, if they'd left the monster to be unseen, as the piece of CGI we do see is far less frightening than whatever we can imagine. And finally, what I'm going to take into my film is, once again, keeping the monster unseen, using lighting and set design to my advantage, especially like low budget, so using one light to light the scenes, because it's not what we can see that's going to be scary at this budget, but what we can't see. So if I only use one flashlight, for example, what's covered by the flashlight isn't going to be scary, it's going to be a shady image, but it's whatever's in the darkness is going to scare them. I'm going to be a bit hypocritical with the names of my characters, with me not naming the main character and the dog that they're looking for going to be my neighbour's dog's name because I need a dog tag. I'll make sure that I'm building suspense and pacing myself well. Like many films, I like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, where not a lot happens, but it builds suspense by you dreading what will happen. Thank you for staying this long. I'm going to go over the plot to my film that I'm going to be filming. So basically, it's about a town that's had a lot of missing animals in the area, and we can see this with posters and stuff on the walls. And then we're going to see our main character putting this poster up for their missing dog. They then go and walk into the woods, and along the way, as they get deeper into the woods, it begins getting dark. And as it gets dark, we see we begin to see it from their point of view, only lit by a flashlight, and we see things like blood, skeletons of dogs and stuff. So eventually, we meet the monster without actually seeing it, with like rustling bushes, and when it gets too close, we just fade to black into the credits. Hopefully I'll be able to film it soon, but due to COVID, I don't think that's going to happen for a while, which is why I'm doing this for D&V instead. I hope you've enjoyed.